Greetings, Deep Dive Podcast listeners. This is your boy, Sam Orum, coming at you with another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. Again, I'm so excited to be here to share a few things with you. I think we mentioned last week that the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we certainly wanted to do our part in terms of contributing to what mental health is, the mental health space. We talked about last week, mental health versus mental illness and things of that nature. And we really wanted to just kind of expand upon that mindset a little bit in terms of this episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. I think it's going to be very interesting for everyone. I think we're going to get a lot of knowledge from it. We're going to talk about how to make yourself mentally strong. And this is very important for a variety of reasons that we'll hop into shortly. But before we do that, for those of you who are logged in again around the world, thank you so very much. I always like to acknowledge the fact that you're supporting the Deep Dive Podcast. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to all of our listeners around the world. So thank you again. For those of you who are new, welcome to the Deep Dive Podcast. We've had a lot of fun. I know the last few weeks we've been doing some relatively deep topics from financial education. As I mentioned, we transitioned right into mental health awareness month and some other things. And as I mentioned before, we're going to have some more lighthearted type topics soon. And, we got some guests scheduled and lined up that we want to bring some entertainment value to you. But I do think that these empowerment topics are very, very important, especially at this particular moment in time, when we're dealing with so much around the world in terms of the pandemic, in terms of war, in terms of economic distress, and, we can go on and on and on. And I do believe a big part of us getting through all of this is to be able to have a strong mental capacity, a strong mindset. That's going to be very important. All of you know that I'm pretty big on, the mindset, which is why I wrote the book, The Mindset of a Champion, because there's a way that we have to think. There's a way that we have to address ourselves in order to be successful. And when you look at what's going on right now, it's more important than ever that we take a very aggressive approach in terms of building a strong mindset, strong mental capacity, being able to handle any type of adversity, because we're conditioning and training our mind to be great. So, let's just jump right into it in the interest of time so we can really, really dive into a few topics. I want you to take some notes. If you're in a situation where you can't take some notes, make sure you go back and listen to the podcast. It's going to be on the website, the Deep Dive Podcast.live, as well as our YouTube channel, the Deep Dive Podcast with Sam Orum. So let's just talk about a couple of things. And I want to start out this topic of talking about focus. I think when we understand what focus is all about, when we understand the value of being focused on what we're doing, that's going to be the first step in training and conditioning our mindset for strength and success. Focusing in on the moment. There are a lot of challenges that come along with, doing certain things and being in the moment, but we have to have some semblance of focus in order to succeed. Here's what I mean. I've said this in many podcasts before, many speeches, and even as an empowerment coach, I've talked about this, but the mind cannot occupy two thoughts at the same time. It is physically impossible to think of two thoughts at the same time. So most of the time when certain things are going on, whether it's good or bad, it's because you're focused on that thing, right? You give that thing that attention, and that's what's going to give it that strength. Well, if you're looking to increase the capacity of your mindset, your mentality, to make your mind strong, then some of the things we're going to talk about on this episode is designed to help you progressively strengthen that mindset, focusing in on it, focus on the moment. Something that's important about even focusing in on the moment, when you start to make these changes, and we all know this, when you start to do certain things that's going to help you advance, grow you, build you, you're going to run into all type of adversity. It's just the way it is. I don't know why it is. It's just the way it is. But you know what? You want to embrace that adversity. You want to embrace that adversity, because my thought is this: if you have accepted the worst case scenario, the worst case outcome in any situation, then anything else that comes your way is not going to bother you because you've already accepted the worst possible outcome. Let me just give you an example from many years ago. This kind of funny, but in college and after we moved out of the dorms and got our own apartments and things of that nature, you know how it is with college students. You don't have a lot of money, and even the little money you have, you're blowing it on stuff you don't need to blow it on, right? Bills weren't a priority, and I found myself on multiple occasions where the electricity was 1 or 2 days from being no more. You know what I'm talking about? Don't play. So I got to a situation where I'm like, you know what? If they turn off the electricity, they just turn off the electricity. I'll sit here in the dark. I'll do what I have to do, but I can't stress about it. And when I accepted the fact, the worst case scenario in this case, electricity being turned off, then hey, nothing else. It didn't bother me anymore. I took away my power from that. I want you to understand something, guys. Every thought, every idea, every vision that you have will be tested for authenticity. It will be tested. You will be tested for authenticity. That means you're going to go through some stuff. Are you willing to continue to pursue and fight and claw and scratch your way through that adversity towards your goal? In this case, mental strength. Are you willing to do those type things? A lot of times people will say, well, Sam, I love to do what you do. You travel a lot, you talk to people, you empower people, and I always ask, would you like to do what I did? This didn't just happen. It's through a lot of hard work, a lot of heartache, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So the question becomes not if you want to do what I do, but do you want to do what I did? You will be tested. Your ideals will be tested. Your vision will be tested for authenticity. Are you willing to do the things that you need to do in order to secure that particular goal? Mental strength gives us the ability to see, different kind of obstacles that are in our path, whether they're stepping stones or whatever it may be. You're going to go through those things, but how do you deal with it? Okay. How do you deal with them? Well, for me, I think a big part of it, and I want you to get this, a big part of it for me was conditioning my mind for success. I'm going to slow down my verbiage on this so you can understand. A big part for me was to condition my mind for success with small wins and small victories and build upon those so that you can now see clearly the bigger wins, the bigger victories. So what do I mean by that? Small victories, exercising your mind for success. Just like you exercise yourself physically for muscles or, whatever, your mind needs to be exercised as well. Your mind can be conditioned for certain things just based on how you utilize your mindset, your thoughts, small wins. So I wanted to put myself over the years in a situation where I have been conditioned. I have conditioned myself, and this is a true story, that I can't even fathom failure. My mind can't even register failure. It just can't. It's either success or learning experiences. I can't even fathom failure. Now, I didn't wake up like that, but what happened? I conditioned myself over a period of time by having small victories. A little something here that I know I could win at, I know I could succeed at it, and I did it, and I became successful, and I was motivated, and then I built upon that, and I built upon that. I've used this example before in the past, and I know it may seem a little crazy, but just kind of bear with me. But back in the day when I started playing video games very heavily, and I started learning video games, and I started understanding how even the creators of the video games, how they thought in creating the video games. And I got really good at a lot of video games, right? I know y'all laughing, but just bear with me. You'll understand what I mean. And it got to a point where regardless of what type of video game I was playing, I became very successful at that game, whether it was sports, whether it was adventure, whatever it was. I started to think like the programmers in an adventure game. And I kind of knew what was about to happen because I was thinking the way the programmers and the designers were thinking. When it came to sports, I started to think a certain way. And my mind, because I was exercising my mind continued to get stronger in anticipation. My mind began to get stronger in terms of execution of certain things, whether it's plays or whatever it may be. And what I noticed is those things started to carry over in my business life, in my everyday life. Because if you think about this, every video game was created by a human who either did it physically or created some type of artificial intelligence that made that particular game tick. So what I started to do is get into the mindset, just started to think like the creators of those games or whatever it may be. When I started to advance in business, I started to think like, how did this particular person, business owner, whatever it may be, what were they thinking about when they created this particular X, Y, Z? And what that allowed me to do is to start anticipating what success would look like because I'm thinking like the thought leaders, right? And I built upon that and built upon that. And lo and behold, I kind of broke the code, if you will, in understanding how thought leaders think. Hence the book, The Mindset of a Champion. There's a way that successful people think. There's a way that thought leaders think. There are ways that people think when they're looking to achieve something. And I feel that I broke that code. Now, how did that happen? Why did I go through this entire, soliloquy on that? It's simple. You have to exercise your mind. You have to condition yourself. So many people have been conditioned to fail. They anticipate failing. They create failing in their lives because that's all they've known. Why not start with some simple, small things that you know you can become victorious at, and your mind doesn't know any different. You understand? Your mind just know that you had a success. Your mind just knows that this worked for you, and then the next thing worked for you, and then the next thing. And subconsciously, you have now started to create a pattern of wins, which create a pattern of success. So exercising that mind is extremely important, but don't just stop there. Sometimes you have to challenge yourself in order to continue to build that mental strength. You have to challenge yourself. Playing it safe sometimes is just not the best for success. Sometimes you have to kind of go after it. I tell people this all the time because I'm talking to so many people about business, and a lot of times people are, they're in financial distress. Their, relationships aren't where they need to be, and just so many things in their lives aren't where they would want them to be. And, either myself, my business partners, executive coaches, people whose job it is to help you get out of that particular rut. We may share some things with you, and as bad as things are, you're still not willing to accept that help. You're looking for the gotcha, right? You're looking for the gotcha. And I tell people all the time, you can't fall off the bottom. You've heard me, if you've been on this podcast more than one time, you've heard me say that before. You can't fall off the bottom. What do you have to lose in terms of listening to someone or accepting an opportunity or maybe changing something? Because, we've all heard this, the definition, of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's not gonna change. You're gonna have to change the dynamics of who you are, what you do. And if you're at the bottom, then what do you have to lose? You guys know that I have a company that offers a business opportunity, One Voice Worldwide, Hot Shot Mall, and those things. And a lot of times, we're offering people an opportunity to own their own business. And, people are like, oh, I don't know. I don't like to do this, or I don't like to do that. Or, again, you can't fall off the bottom. You have to understand people make millions of dollars in waste management. Do you think they like waste? It's not what you like. It's how you can condition yourself for success, even with short-term sacrifices for long-term success. You have to be willing to do those type things. You have to challenge yourself to do some things that typically you may not want to do, right? In order to have the things that you typically don't have. It's just that simple, but you have to challenge yourself. You can't be passive. You can't be casual about life. If you're casual about life, you'll become a casualty. Okay. Now, even in challenging yourself, though, regardless of the outcome, you have to respond positively. You have to, respond positively. Praise progress. Even if you didn't achieve a certain goal in a certain time frame, then praise progress. It doesn't matter. You can't control every aspect of everything that comes your way, but you are absolutely in control of how you react to those things that come your way. Are you going to have a pity party? Are you going to be woe is me? How do you respond to adversity or even success? All success does to a lot of people is make you more of who you are. If you are a great, kind-hearted, loving person, you'll just become more of that. If you're a jerk, you just become more of that, right? It doesn't change the dynamics, but what you want to be able to do as you're growing mentally and strengthening yourself mentally is just to be able to respond positively, regardless of the outcome. Keep that balance. Be very, very humble in what you do. The nature of my business, a lot of people give me a lot of edification and kudos and attaboys and things of that nature. And, I understand the game. It's important to edify, especially someone who a person you're edifying to may not know. You're giving that person's credentials so that you can build respect. But I got to tell you, man, I cringe every time I'm edified because I don't know, it's the humble nature in me that doesn't allow me to receive well. I'm a giver, but I don't receive well. And even edification, I cringe. Like I said, I understand the game. I understand the value and the reasoning, but I just kind of cringe when I'm edified because I try to remain humble. And, so those type things, it just kind of make me a bit uncomfortable. But understand, I still have to respond positively to that edification because it's not for me. Don't believe your own press. Don't believe your own hype. It's not for you. It is for the person who you're speaking to, right? So that they'll understand and at least respect who you are based on that level of education. And also, in the midst of that, through the edification, through thinking things through, be mindful. You have to be mindful. Mindfulness means that you're taking control of your focus. Remember, we talked about being focused, right? Mindfulness means that you're taking control of your focus and being intentional about what you give your attention to. That's powerful. So you think about it. We're talking about being mindful, okay? Again, that just means that, the word we talked about earlier in terms of focus, you're being intentional. That means very deliberate, very specific, intentional about what you give your attention to. I do know when we're talking about focus, the things that you focus on the most, you manifest those things into your life. You really do that. People, I say this to so many people in different coaching sessions, but a lot of times people create havoc in their lives because they're focusing in on the negative stuff. They're focusing in on, what if my computer breaks? What if my computer breaks? What if my computer breaks? And they keep focusing in on that. And guess what happens? The computer breaks. So you have to be mindful of and intentional on what you're focusing in on. Now, there may be one little exception to this, and I've been trying to figure it out. I don't know what the time limit on this whole, being intentional on what you focus on, because there's something that I've been focusing in on since I was, a teenager, and it still hadn't manifested itself. And I've been focusing on it relentlessly, and that is being able to marry Janet Jackson. Let me tell you something, and let me digress for one just quick second with this podcast. Janet Jackson, I don't care what nobody say. is the finest woman God ever created. Um, if I ever get my hands on her, I'm just gonna just drop to my knees and make that proposal. I've been focusing in on that since she was penny on good times. You know, I'm gonna marry Janet. I'm gonna marry Janet. I'm gonna marry Janet. And I've been talking to people and just, she stay hitting. I can't tell you where she is. But one of these days, I'm gonna create and manifest that reality where Janet becomes my wife. I don't care what nobody say. But anyway, need I digress? But be mindful and intentional on what you give your attention to. How are you focusing? Okay. Something else is don't be defeated by fear. We know the generic definition of fear, the acronym, false evidence appearing real. Let me tell you something, guys. There are only two fears that you're born with. That's the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Those are the only two fears that you're born with. Every other fear is a learned behavior. It is learned. If you're afraid of snakes, it's because it was learned. If you're afraid of this, if you have fear about this, it is because it was learned. Well, remember, we're talking about mental strength, right? If it was learned, you can be reconditioned or unlearned, if you will, if that's a word. But in terms of getting rid of that fear, you just have to change your state. I remember going to Anthony Robbins' Mastery University. This been like many years ago. I don't even know if he's still doing that. But one of the things that he did in his Mastery University, he would take people who had certain types of fears and he would show them how they can conquer those fears, whether it was being afraid of snakes or whatever it may be. And the way he did that is he would change someone's state. He would bring someone on the stage that may be afraid of snakes or something to that effect. And, he may have a snake or something on stage. And of course, this person is petrified of this particular snake. But at some point during the conversation, he would do something to break that break that state, break that person's state. For example, he may, in the middle of the conversation and looking at this snake, he may just touch them on the shoulder and say, "Hey, how you doing?" In that moment, the person can't focus on the snake because they're focusing in on the fact that he said, "Hey, how you doing?" just by touching them on the shoulder and anchoring a particular thought. He may say something in the middle, and this is true. He would say something in the middle of his conversation about this snake, and he would say something like, "Hey, did you fart?" And the person, I remember, just started laughing hysterically, right? And when he said that, he also touched her on the shoulder, and he said that, and she just started laughing hysterically because in the middle of this serious conversation about a snake, he's like, "Hey, did you fart?" Well, guess what happened? As he continued to converse with this person, at some point, he didn't say anything and he just touched her on the shoulder and she started laughing hysterically. She just started laughing. He didn't even say anything. He just touched her on the shoulder and she started laughing hysterically again. After so long, what happened is her focus changed from the fear of that snake to laughing hysterically when she thought about snakes. That's amazing. That's reconditioning your mindset. We have to be able to do that, especially if you have certain type of fears, understanding that you're only born with the fear of falling or the fear of loud noises. Everything else is learned and can be reconditioned. Okay, so don't let fear keep you from doing the things that you need to do. Don't let, self-talk or self-doubt keep you from doing the things that you need to do. Be aware of your self-talk, because that's very important. Make a point of being positive and supportive of yourself and even other people during your process of growing mentally. Remember, the ultimate goal is to strengthen your mindset so that nothing affects you. Everything is either an opportunity or a learning experience. I don't have problems, and I don't say that from a standpoint of the actual idea of a problem, but what I mean is I don't look at things as problems. I look at things as things that need to be solved. I don't have that word problem in my vocabulary. It's just a challenge. How do I overcome this particular challenge? You don't let problems manifest themselves. Because let me tell you something. If you guys are of any age who are listening to this podcast, 5 years ago you had problems, 10 years ago you had problems, 15 years ago you had problems. Think about this. I'm sure all of you had problems 10 or 15 years ago, right? I'm sure most of you don't even know what they were. You don't even know what your problems were 15 years ago for the most part. Well, understand where you are today. Regardless of how detrimental those problems seem today, then, 1 year from now, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you're not going to even remember what they are. So just continue to have that positive attitude and that positive self-talk in terms of what you need to do to continue to move forward. It's all on you. You got to rid yourself of the word can't. You got to rid yourself of any possibility other than a success or learning experience. Sometimes you want to stumble towards success. You just keep building and driving and towards success. One of the things, and I think I have this in the book, where I talked about Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill said one time, success is stumbling from failure to failure with and with no loss of enthusiasm. Think about that. Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. That means regardless of the failure, or in this case, the challenge, regardless of the challenge, just keep stumbling through it if you need to, but still being enthusiastic about the ultimate outcome, the ultimate goal. If everybody knew how to do everything perfectly, everybody would have success, and that's not the case. Even the most quote unquote successful people have had all types of adversities and challenges that must be addressed. We're no different. Everybody have challenges, but how do you deal with them? Do you stumble through these failures or these challenges each and every time with no loss of enthusiasm? You're still fired up about your success. We're in a society right now, and where we've talked about this before, but people have become very, very tribal. There are very little interaction between races, between religious ideologies. There's just so much fracture in humanity that we've gotten to a point where I just think humanity has taken a step backwards over the last 20 years. And it's unfortunate because a successful physical relationship in terms of humanity, in terms of treating people a certain way, that's one of the 6 steps to an ultimate life. And we're breaking down those institutions. We're breaking down in the institution of people. We're breaking down the institution of religion and spirituality. And by the way, those are 2 different things. But all these institutions are being broken down. We're breaking down the institution of a 2-parent household. These things are being broken down. Well, it is what it is. But here's the thing. How do you still thrive in the midst of all of these type of adversities? Well, you got to have a certain mindset. You got to have a certain mindset to deal with all of these things that are going on. And you want to be in a situation where you're looking to find solutions. Don't focus on the problems. Focus on the solutions. Again, with my business, I come in contact with so many different people, and inevitably, the people who are not having success, every time I talk to them, the only thing they're talking about are the problems. Always. It's been this way as long as I can remember, forever. The people who are not having the success are always talking about the problems. This is going wrong. This is going wrong. I can't do this. I can't do that. This is not working. That's not working. They said no. All of these things, they're always focusing in on the problems, never focusing in on the solution. Never focusing in on the solution. My mind immediately goes toward finding a solution. I hear people all the time, and I've said this on other podcasts. So, people all the time like to reference they. Well, they said they said this and they said that. My first question is, who is they? Who is they? They said this, and this person doing this, and these people doing this, and they all of these things, right? Well, my question is, so what? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? To sit here and tell me what they, quote unquote, said, or to talk about how they are oppressing you, or how you're talking about they are going to do this. Look, from my standpoint, either you're going to do something about it or die. What else is it to do? If you're going to live, then you got to do something about it. What are you going to do about it? Not just, wonder what they said and they did. You don't listen to they. Let me tell you why. Because when the pandemic first started, I had a couple of my friends tell me, I mean, this was the very early stages of COVID. And I had a couple of friends tell me, one guy in particular, I'll never forget. I think I screenshotted this text. He said, Black people can't get COVID because, the amount of melanin in their skin, Black people can't get COVID. I'm like, so where did you get that from? That's what they said. They said Black people can't get COVID. Well, let me know how that worked out for you. I'm black as they come, kind of black as they come. I'm red black. But I had COVID. And when I sat at laid in that hospital, just a few hours from not even being on earth, you couldn't tell me that Black people couldn't get COVID because they had the amount of melanin in their skin. That was an idiotic statement that, they got from what they said. Another friend of mine said the same thing, that Black people can't get COVID. Well, we can't have any other dispute about that because he didn't survive COVID and he's Black. And he said Black people couldn't get COVID. He's dead. Stop worrying about what they said and this, that, and the other. And you find solutions yourself. I listen to people and I listen attentively, and I don't get into debates, especially about stuff that, I have a limited knowledge of. So I don't get into debates and all this other kind of stuff. I don't even, some of my friends, they play cards and all this other kind of stuff, and they trash talk, or basketball and game, they trash talk and all of that. I don't even trash talk. And here's why. I don't have the mentality to trash talk because I get mad. You start joking on me or talk. I'm not going to trash talk you, because when you trash talk me back, I'm going to get mad. I already know I'm going to get mad. I'm going to have an attitude. So, I don't even get into it. People talk trash about basketball, or they go talk trash about playing cards. How they play cards and do all of this stuff, and they call it, I think you call it Jonesins or whatever you call it. Well, I can't get into it because I can't take it. So I don't even start. I ain't gonna try to joke with nobody, because as soon as you start joking, call me fat or ugly or any of these things, then I'm gonna get mad and then I'm gonna fight you. So you have to be mindful of those things. I know your limits. Hey, that's one of my limitations. I can't take it, so I don't go there. Stay in your lane, right? So all of these things, guys, as we wrap up, all of these things are a part of you developing a strong mental capacity, a strong mindset, building that mindset so that you can thrive no matter what the situation is. A big part of that, and I learned this from Oprah, and it's in the book as well, talking about being grateful. You have to be grateful for whatever it is, because everything is a part of your ultimate life plan, whatever it is. So you have to be grateful. Be prepared for the storm. As I said earlier, every idea, every vision is going to be tested for authenticity. You better be prepared for it. You got to know it's coming. People are going to talk about you. They're going to try to bring you down, chastise you, all kinds of stuff. Just be prepared for that storm, because it's coming. That's just the nature of people, right? Define your moments. Now, what I mean when I say define your moments, you have to think about it like this. When you find yourself doubting how far you can go, just kind of have to remember how far you've come. Being successful in a lot of cases is like watching grass grow or watching paint dry. If you're looking at trying to stand there and watch grass grow, it doesn't look like it's growing. You can just stand there and look at it. You can't tell it's growing, but you walk away and come back. And, even in a week, you're like, man, I need to cut the grass, right? Well, building your mindset, building your capacity, building your vision is very similar. You have to make sure that you understand when you start to doubt, when you start to have these things creep into your mindset, not only remember where you're going, but remember how far you've come in watching that grass grow. Give yourself credit for everything that you faced. Praise progress. As I said, you have to give yourself credit. This is all a mind game. Remember, we're talking about your mindset. We're talking about strengthening your mindset. Give yourself credit for the adversities you faced, the battles that you've won, even the fears that you've overcome. If you've overcome the fear of snakes or whatever it may be, give yourself credit. Give yourself an attaboy. Okay. And last but not least, make sure that, every day in your everyday pursuit, that you understand that mental strength is built and demonstrated not just in exceptional circumstances. That means the big things, right? Not just in the big victories, but then also the day-to-day activities of life and even leadership. Those successes come polka a polka. If you're in music, you understand that means little by little, right? A little thing here, a little thing there. You start to stack these small successes on top of each other, polka a polka, little by little. And before you know it, just like watching that grass grow, you come back, you would have been elevated to heights previously unknown because you've taken these incremental successes and built upon those. Positivity, preparation, willingness, discipline, focus, all of these things are part of the long view that's going to actually serve you well. Being positive is going to serve you well. Being prepared is going to serve you well. Being willing to go through whatever that may be is going to serve you well. Being disciplined in what you have to do is going to serve you well. And above all, focusing on what you're doing is going to serve you well. I do believe that with everything that's in me. And then when you've built that mindset now, and you've built that mental strength, you're strong mentally. You practice that mental toughness, and you'll soon be amazed at how strong you have become mentally. You will be amazed. So I'm going to challenge every one of you, each and every one of you, to continue to be great, to continue to build on your mindset, word for word by word, instance by instance, situation by situation, day by day. Just build upon these things incrementally. When you take a look at your life 12 months from now, just like that grass growing, just like that paint drying, you may not have seen it, but you will have made a world of difference in terms of who you are and how your mindset has grown and built to the highest heights of capacity. So with that, guys, I thank you so very much for joining me on this particular episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. We're having a great time, man. I'm having so much fun just sharing with each and every one of you, and I hope you continue to follow us. Remember, to any podcast platform, I think I'm on 22 different podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, whatever it may be. Like, subscribe, download, and share. It's very important that we continue to build the podcast around the globe. I have some great things that's going to be happening in different parts of the world as I start to travel the world again relatively soon. So I look forward to meeting those of you who are in different parts of the world. And until then, everybody continue to build your mental capacity, continue to be great, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world. God bless.